Topanga Audio.
If you enjoy the stories on this podcast, you'll also like the stories in my book, Filmmaking Confidential, which isn't just for filmmakers, but also all artists and really any entrepreneur. Now an Amazon.com and Audible.com bestseller. I just want to say thank you to all of you who ordered it. If you haven't yet picked it up, it's available wherever books are sold in most countries around the world. To find out more, check out filmmakingconfidential.com and stevebalderson.com. And thank you. I'm Steve Balderson, and you're listening to the Filmmaking Confidential podcast. Every week we meet with filmmakers, writers, actors, artists, and other notables. Today, for the final podcast of Season 1, my guest is one of my favorite performers in all the world. Betti O has appeared on stage from New York to Japan. She has performed for Hillary Rodham Clinton, led the Asian tour of Ain't Misbehavin, and her soulful voice has appeared in music projects worldwide. Her legendary performance on Showtime at the Apollo ended in a standing ovation, naming Betti O the winner. She's also appeared in many of my films.
This is a gun-free school zone! When I find you, I'm gonna rip your arms off! Shoot guns on school property!
That was Betti O in my film, Pep Squad.
I never had a lot of friends because we were always surrounded around relatives. So I always had all cousins around me. I had one best friend. Everybody else was cousins. So, when you get together with your cousins, I would always want to play like we were in the movies, and they were like, no, we don't want to do that. I was like, yeah, I'm going to direct you, and I'm going to be a star, and I'm going to be, and they were like, no, we don't want to do that. So, and then when my dad married my stepmom, because when I came along, my biological mom died like 4 days after giving birth to me. And so for a long time, I thought she died from childbirth. And they said, no. She died because she had blood clots. So I was raised by grandparents, and I was very grateful because they could afford to do it. So they allowed me to have my imagination. They allowed me to have my voice. And in my culture, that Black church, Black community, when we were little 1,000 years ago, you were not really allowed to conversate with your elders or the older people. Children had to play with children, and if you came around adults, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and you kind of sat still and you didn't really conversate with them. But my grandmother would allow me to conversate with her and her friends. And a lot of her friends didn't like that at all. And so I was that kind of kid that was funny, but I didn't know that I was funny. I was that kid that I would say, Mama, how come Miss Gordon is looking at me like this? And she said, I don't know. And I say, Miss Gordon, how come you looking at me like this? And she said, because you need a spanking. You're not supposed to be talking to, old people. And I was like, Mama, because she said I need a spanking. That's why Miss Gordon. So I was that kid that would tell on the adults of what they were doing because they just thought I shouldn't be conversating with them, or I shouldn't be sitting at the table with my grandmother drinking coffee. They had that old Folgers coffee, honey. That stuff had you buzzing for about 10 hours. So I would be sitting there at the table drinking. I was just like this little older person that kept my granny company because all of her friends that had grandkids, they weren't allowed to do that. So, she gave me my voice. Think about it. A lot of kids don't have their voice. They weren't allowed to speak. They weren't allowed to express themselves. They weren't allowed to say, okay, so I was punished for this, but why? And she would explain things to me, whereas other adults would be like, I'm an adult. I don't have to explain nothing to you. You're a kid. And I was like, no, I need to know what's going on and why you're communicating with me this way. So she allowed me to have my voice. And there was no difference between when the mailman would come who was white or the milkman that would come that was white. You know, my granny would invite them in, come sit down, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee. Everybody would conversate. But Steve, there were other families that in different communities, they were afraid of white people. They were afraid because of different things that was going on in America. And some people were intimidated by other groups of people. So they didn't have the diversity in their community, whereas we did. Mm-hmm. So think about that just for a minute. Just in your circle, you have to think, in my circle, is there a lot of just not forced diversity? I'm talking about your neighbors or, you know, Latino, you know, not just one, but 4 and 5 families or 4 and 5 families that are Black. And we just come together and we play and we have a good time. It was nothing that was forced. It was nothing that they can't be in our neighborhood. It was just a diversity and an openness that when you allow kids to grow up that way, it's no big deal.
Right.
You're not afraid to reach out to somebody that doesn't look like you, because from that point, we're just on a human scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Think about it. Even today, kids are going to predominantly schools that it's a division, even here in Manhattan. It's more diversity than some places, but even little kids that I've talked to, and I would say something like Susie. So Susie is this little white girl and she's blonde hair and blue eyes and she's 5 years old. And so this little Black boy walked around. And so she's looked at him and I say, "Oh, is that your boyfriend?" And she says, "No, we're not supposed to talk to them." And I thought, damn, ain't this 2015 or 16? How is a little kid of 5 or 6 saying we're not supposed to talk to them? Because she went to a predominantly all-white school here in Manhattan. As a young age, started forming pictures in her mind already of division that would just be a natural thing for her because that was her little playground and community.
Right.
So it's interesting how young it starts. And that's what I was saying. Mine was always diversity. Everybody was on the same playing field. We just wanted to play, have a good time, eat, come on in. You came to my granny's door, she'd be like, "Hey, Steve, how you doing?" Not, "Oh, that's white Steve. Yeah, he needs to come up." It was, you know what I mean? "Oh, that's Betty O. Yeah, that's the Black Betty O, or that's the Black family." It's like, no, I'm human first. I'm Betty first. I'm Betty O first. And then whatever marking you want to put on me, okay. But it doesn't change the dynamics of who I am. You know what I mean? That's you trying to make yourself feel comfortable or prep your friends to say, well, when Betty O comes around, it won't be a shock to say, "Oh, well, you didn't say she was Black." And it's like, because that's just Betty O. It doesn't have
right.
to be, right? I can just say, "Hey, Steve's coming over." I don't have to say, "Oh, yeah, you know, Steve, yeah, the white guy, yeah, Steve Robinson's coming over." So that's what I'm trying to change the narrative in my life. Can I just say, hey, Mimi, I love you. You know, come over, let's have tea, let's hang out. I don't want to define who my circle and association is.
Yeah, exactly.
The bottom line was, for me, living in, you know, Germany and traveling and doing that type of thing, people just wanted the basic stuff, man. Everybody just wanted to be left alone. Nobody wanted war. People were curious about each other. You know, what do you like? What do you do? What's your favorite foods? What kind of music you like? You know, just because we were Americans in Germany, they were just curious. They were curious about your skin, about your teeth, just the curiosity of just being another person. But I have to say that for kids, I think somewhere in there, when kids are really, really little, they don't identify so much with the complexion of what someone is because they just want to play. But I think that it's a great thing to identify that, you know, you are Pong, yeah, you're Asian. So that's great. I like it. So you're Asian. So, show me some culture and let's share some things. Oh, Betty O, yeah, she's Black, but don't define me as Black Betty O. I am
Right.
Black. I want you to see who I am because I'm proud of who I am and I have something to bring to the table because it's like a blanket, like they say, it's a tapestry and we can all add to it to make it great. So I don't want you to be colorblind that you don't see me because then that makes me think that I'm not enough. And I know that I'm enough. But I just want you to share the human side of just who we are. It's like, do you have to put a daggone mask on all the time? I mean, I know this way we do, but not this way of who we are.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what's going to happen. Hey, Steve, I don't know what happens when you transition or whatever. I don't know about any of that. I just know I want to have a good time now. I don't want to be spinning my wheels on trying to be evil or mean or stabbing somebody in the back or, I'm just trying to have a good time for real.
Yeah.
So that's
so beautiful. When did you start singing?
Okay. So when I tell this story, I know people say they've seen it, but I swear it happened to me. My grandmother raised me in church. I was 2 or 3. I always sat in the choir with her because I was so young. I was very attached to her. And so Black church, get up, they sing their song. And when they sat down, I stood up at 3, she said, and started singing Smokey Robinson. My mama told me to shop around. Well, the church was livid. Oh my God, she got this baby singing devil music. Oh my God, the church was in an uproar. But the minister knew that I had to have been exposed somewhere. So it was my grandmother's daughter. She was married and had a family. When we would go over to her house, she would play R&B. She would play Ray Charles. She'd play all this stuff. So as a kid, it absorbed in my body and I just started listening to it. So by the time I would go home, it would be in my head. So as a kid, being the baby of the house, because my sister was older and so she was in school or whatever, it's just me and my granny there, I would just start singing in these songs. And she's like, hold on, where you hear that from? I don't know, because I was a kid. I couldn't remember where my exposure was. So it was always little things. But then when I got in grade school and I wanted to, I was deathly shy. I couldn't do it. In my mind, I knew that I could, but I didn't know how to deal with stage fright or performing in front of people. So I knew that I could, but I didn't know how to break that cycle. So eventually I kept falling on my face, trying to do things, sing in front of people, fall apart, wait for a little while for another talent show, try again, fall apart. And so, but no one in my family never said, oh my God, for heaven's sakes, cut it out, will you? I mean, you got stage fright. You can't do this. No one never said that. They just kept saying, well, you were better than last time. So, so just kind of keep going. So eventually through grade school of that 10 and 12, just kept trying. I remember being by myself mostly and just my granny bought me this little red and white record player. And I would listen to once it only had one record. And I would listen to it over and over and over again until I matched the pitch. And when I got older, people started telling me that I was singing with pitch. I had pitch perfect. You got a perfect pitch. And I never knew what that meant for years and years because I didn't know what they were saying. I just know I would listen to a sound and I would emulate that sound. And it had to be perfect. It couldn't be off. It couldn't be this. And so that kind of taught me, along with singing with some cousins eventually around 9th grade, got into a singing group with a couple of ladies that when I go home to St. Louis, I still hang out with them. So I guess really singing, probably, around maybe 15 or 16, but not really an audience, just kind of singing around family. My stepmom took me to see Dreamgirls at the Fox Theater. I was 23 years old. And the one lady that had the lead, her name was Sharon. I had never done any theater stuff other than little small things in school, not a lot, because I was really afraid and shy. Saw Sharon sing, And I'm telling you, it felt like I floated out of my body. I said, I've got to do this. I've got to do musical theater. That's where I'm supposed to be. And the director that directed that, Danny Herman, how about years later, I end up auditioning for him and working with him on Dreamgirls in Hawaii.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. No one in my family really sang. My grandfather was a choir director. My grandmother sang in the choir, but she wasn't a singer. My dad, they tell me my mom wasn't a singer or a performer. Kind of look through the history of where I come from, and there is no singers or performers at all.
When was your first like professional stage job?
Well, when I was about 14, we had a singing group, and the lady, Miss Boyd, or her name was Miss Moore. I used to call her Miss Boyd. I don't know why I kept mispronouncing her name, but Miss Boyd, she was like a vocal coach, and she taught Dennis Edward of the Temptations. She taught his mom how to play piano. So we would all be at her house because I was singing with her children. She had no furniture in her house, Steve, at all. No furniture. Everything in her house was instruments. All her children played instruments or they sang. And so that's where I spent a lot of my time. And she would book us at different colleges in St. Louis, and we would sing. But we had no idea that we were getting paid. So for real, we were professionals because she was taking the money. So we had no idea that's what Miss Boyd was doing with the money. But we didn't care because we were like 13, 14, and 15. And she would sneak us in these bars to sing. And so we just wanted to sing. We had no idea. And even on the college campuses, we had no idea we were getting paid. So I guess those were some of the first professional gigs, but we just wasn't getting paid.
That's crazy. When was Showtime at the Apollo?
I think that was in 90. It was either 93 or 95. And what happened with that, I was doing a theater show in Wichita at the Crown Theater. And every night after the performance, I would run home to the actor's house because we were just right down the street from the theater. I would run home to the actor's house and just watch Showtime at the Apollo. I just kept watching it. And I kept saying, I could do this. I can do it. And so I kept saying, well, how am I going to get myself on there? Because no one could tell me how to actually get on the stupid show. I was like, how do you get on this daggum show? Nobody could tell me. So I started looking at the credits. And then it said talent coordinator, Maxine. So I thought, well, shoot, I'm going to call information and I'm going to ask for Maxine. So I called the Apollo Theater. I said, may I please speak to Maxine? They were like, hold on. I was like, oh my God, you're ready to put Maxine on? Oh my God. So she gets on. Hello. I said, hello, my name is Betti O. Who is this? I said, my name is Betti O. I'm calling from Manhattan. What part of Manhattan? Where you at down in Manhattan? I said, no, it's Manhattan, Kansas. I ain't never heard no Manhattan, Kansas. I said, I know, but okay, anywho. So I need to be on the show. She said, who you think you are? You don't just get on no show. You have to come in and that's your prize. You have to come in, compete. And if you win, the first prize is being on live TV, being on TV with Showtime at the Apollo. That's the winning prize. And I said, no, I don't have time to do all that. I'm in Manhattan, Kansas. I can't afford to fly there and do that. I can't. Okay, then she said, bye. So then I waited for a week and I called her back. Hello, may I speak to Maxine? Steve, I'm not kidding you. I did this for probably about 4 or 5 weeks. So finally she said, look at here. I'm going to put you on the show, but don't you call me no more. Don't you call here no more. If you don't call me, I'll put you on. I said, okay, I'm not going to call you no more, but what information do I need to make sure I get on? She gave me all the information I needed. So I had a friend in New York. I flew up about a few weeks later, signed in. The guy said, well, who is your agent? A lot of people at the Apollo have agents. They have managers. They have teams. And what they're trying to do is expose people to the talent. So you can say, got my start at Showtime at the Apollo, but a lot of them are already established. I wasn't that person. So when I came to the door to sign in, the guy goes, well, who's your manager? So I know, people kind of play the whole spiritual card. So I looked up like, I looked up like that. He was like, oh, okay then. Well, come on in. I didn't have to say nothing. Came in, I signed up. The reason why they boo you so fast at the Apollo is because they have been sitting in those seats or hanging around for over 8 to 10 hours. I signed in at 2 p.m. I was on the first show. The first show did not air, did not record. They did not tape that show until 10 p.m. that night.
Oh my God.
That was the first show. So then what they do is people boo you really quickly because they want to get up and walk around. Because of course, when you're filming, you can't get up and walk around. So if you don't catch their attention the first few minutes, then they're going to boo you because they want to get up and walk around because it's a long day. And they shoot 4 shows in one day. So I did the 10 p.m. show and I did the 2 p.m. show. And so they continue to shoot because once you don't win anymore, then, you know, you go home. So they shot ours at 2 p.m. and at 10 p.m. So it was a matter of just being persistent and pretending like you knew what you were doing. That's how I got on.
That's amazing. I love that story. And I love that you just bothered her to death.
Yes.
You just called her and called her. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. And you had standing ovation after you performed?
Yes, because I just kept saying, I meditate. I have to tell you that. I meditate. And so I kept seeing myself there and I kept saying, I just want to be memorable. I just want to be memorable. That's it. I just want them to remember me. So I was, again, studying different shows when I would come home from the theater. And I kept saying, what could I do that would make me memorable? And so I was like, well, at the end, just like pass out or something. And I was like, I could do that. So then I'm practicing on my fall. I'm practicing, you know, passing out on stage afterwards. And it wasn't clicking. It just did not, during the rehearsal or practice, it didn't come together, but I kept trying. So then once I actually got out there, I'm not kidding you, Steve, this is a true story. There is something in that Apollo building. And I've heard people say that after I shared my story. Once I couldn't nail the fall that I wanted to do after my song, I said, okay, scratch it. Just sing the song and don't worry about it. You can't hear. The sound is bouncing everywhere. So you can't hear where your notes are. You can't hear when the music starts. You just have to go. You have 90 seconds and you just have to go. So I remember hitting the very last note, and I'm not kidding you, a force punched me in my chest. And that's what made me go back, because I wanted to just do like the pretty girl, just and fall like that. Something went kaboom. I mean, it was like a force in my chest. And if you really, really look close at the video footage, it's like somebody placed me down, because if I would have done it by myself, I think you would have heard the mic hit the stage. You know what I mean? When you fall, the mic go boom, boom. No, a force felt like it laid me down. You didn't hear the mic hit the stage or anything. And that's when I remember they stood up. Steve Harvey started laughing. He was like, oh my God, how did you do? What is going on? So when I got up and I went backstage to get ready for the second show, I was telling people, oh my God, somebody pushed me out there. They were like, get her some water. I was like, I'm not getting you. Something pushed me. I didn't fall on my own. Something pushed me. And everybody was looking like, okay, sweetie, let's get you some water. And so you can just calm down. Okay. I was like, I'm not kidding. So, you know, it just felt very spiritual. You could feel old spirits or entertainers that was in that building. I mean, you could feel it, that there's something that was once in that building. You know, all those old entertainers, you could feel them in there. I'm not kidding you. Seriously.
Here's a bit of Betti O's award-winning performance on Showtime at the Apollo.
Hey, think about what you're trying to do to me. Babe, think that your mind won't let you set me free. Walking around every day playing games that keep score. Trying to make other people lose their mind. I can't fire that lotion. Oh, think about what you're trying to do to me. Babe, think
one and only Betti O. Another wonderful guest is cult icon Mink Stoll.
John Waters will tell you a story that I threw a saxophone at him. We didn't speak. After we finished filming Pink Flamingos, I moved out.
You can hear my full interview with Mink at filmmakingconfidential.com or by subscribing for free to this podcast. We'll be right back with the one and only Betti O. Stay with us. I'm Steve Balderson, and this is the Filmmaking Confidential podcast. I'm back with Betti O.
We were doing Ain't Misbehavin'. It was a diverse cast, and the military USO, one of their representatives, came and was really impressed with our performance, and they hired us. And 3 weeks later, we were on a tour of Guam, Korea, Okinawa. We just did a whole Asian leg of a tour for about 30 days with Ain't Misbehavin', just from a USO representative coming. And that had to be, that was also in like the late 80s. That was like, before we transferred here to Manhattan, Kansas. So that was really like 89, something like that, or 90. But It was a fluke thing. It was just a really strange fluke thing that they came and they hired us. And because they say people wait a couple of years to get on those USO tours, they don't really pay that much, but it's an opportunity to, visit the soldiers and that type of deal. So they were impressed and they hired us. And so we were on our way. That's how we got that.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
You were in my first movie and second and third and fourth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was one you skipped and then you came back in for a couple or something like that. I can't remember. But describe for me the difference of acting on stage, going from musical theater in front of an audience to sitting in a room with a camera and some people without an audience. Or was the crew kind of like your audience? Like, how was the performing different?
Yeah, I guess you can kind of say that. I can remember, first of all, auditioning for Magnum PI when we were in Hawaii, because I had some buddies and they were like, oh, just come out for an audition. And I was like, okay. So they said, well, you have to meet with this agent first that does the casting. I think her name at the time was Margaret Dovasola. So it's 1,000 years ago. So when I went in there and she gave me the script, you have to do a cold script. And so I did that. And after it was over, she said, oh, no, honey, you are theater. You are too big and it was too loud and it was just too much. And I thought, okay. And her energy was, they don't have time for, to baby you or guide you or anything. They just didn't have that. So when the opportunity came for me to be a part of your projects, you gave me enough conversation that it calmed me down to the point that I didn't have to have all that big energy. Because when you talk to us, it was like, well, this is what you need to do. And, it's on you. You decide. I mean, you just have this real low back softness. So I couldn't come in like, well, now, okay, now what are you saying? Now, what do we need to do? Because your energy was like, okay, so this is the deal. And you would talk real soft. And then you would be like, you had a little laugh about something. And you're like, you got it. You'll figure it out. You got this. And I thought, damn. Okay, he's saying that I got this. And so I'm traumatized by this lady that was telling me my energy was too big. But you allowed me to feel the calmness in the room, the calmness of the direction. And it gave me just that little bit of confidence that after we got through like one or two scenes, and you would give us notes, and I would be like, okay, but you gave us so much room for creativity. That, for me, that really helped me. And it allowed me to try to zoom in on who the character was through theater, but to pull it back because it was being on film and I understood of how sensitive everything was. If it's 10 times on stage, it's minus 100 on film. So go way, way back. And so you allowed all of us really to do that. Again, it starts at the top, it trickles down. I think you knew that I was green coming in there. And so you gave me space to find my way and to take directions. Because if not, you're not coming back. Thank you, but goodbye. Next.
Totally.
That's how that went.
Growing up in the Midwest, there are a lot of creative, talented people who otherwise don't have the opportunities to share their talent or have even a platform to perform on.
Yeah.
So we were all very lucky in that way, that where we come, are from, there were places for people to.
True. And a lot of very famous people came from small towns. I'm like, because you're in a small town doesn't mean that you don't have a gift or talent.
Right.
But it gives you other resources that you can reach out to, because it's like what you said the other day. We don't have the walls up to say, oh, well, you're in California, and you have to do this, this, and this, and this is how it's done. Well, we don't even think like that. We think, oh, okay, this is what we need to have done. So you come up with a creative way of raising money. You come up with a creative way of getting projects done. Whereas when you're more, it's not, I don't want to necessarily say tainted, but when you have that narrow view of what you think you're supposed to do, it throws up walls to your creativity, how you can get things done in a different way, to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the stuff you were sharing, people were like, and I was listening like, yeah, because I thought it was done that way because that's what Steve always done. So I didn't have the walls up of, well, you're in California, baby. This is how we do it, baby. We didn't have that.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know that what we were doing was unusual until I learned it was, later on, where they're like, oh, you can't do that. I said, what do you mean I can't do it? I've done it 15 times. I'm like, what do you?
Exactly.
But that's the same. It's like, Maxine, stop calling me and I'll put you on the show. It's like, you didn't know not to call her.
Exactly right. I did not know. They didn't tell me.
Right. Exactly. But if you lived in, the big city, if you were from LA or New York, oh, well, God, I couldn't just call Maxine.
Right. Exactly. And I wouldn't have the nerve to do it because I would have been afraid from all the outside noise. And it was always like it was my first time, Steve. Whenever she would get on the phone, I was like, hey, Maxine, how you doing this Betti O? This who? Shouldn't I tell you? I was like, I was just checking in just to see how you do. Click. I mean, it was a couple of times she hung up on me for real. So I said, oh, I'll just wait a couple of weeks and then I'll, call again in a nice way. Hey, how you doing? How's the weather?
That's so good. I love it. I love that so much. God, I had a similar story that was just one of those things that I used to do the same thing. And I would just call up somebody. Well, it was a little bit like that with Karen Black, who she told me no, originally. She would not be in my movie. But I thought, well, that's unacceptable. So I kept calling her. I kept sending her letters. I kept sending her things. And then when I was in LA, I said, oh, I'm just going to call her up and say, I'm in LA and I'm going to go by her house. And I said, hey, can I come by your house? And she said, okay. And I showed up and I think I waited in the front room for like 35 minutes. Like I was brought into the living room and I said, she'll be with you in a moment, and then I just am sitting there sweating because I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then she comes in and we visit and then she says, okay, I'll do it. And I said, oh, and she said, I expected you to look very scary or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
And then later on, she said that being persistent was actually admirable.
Okay.
It's like if you keep going at it, at least it shows you're passionate.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
out of all the movies you've done with me anyway, what was your favorite part?
I think for me, it's just always that first, Miss Nelson. It was just because it was so new and exciting and different, and you gave me a lot of responsibility, and I for me, it's the first. You just, I don't know. My first for me with you, it was just the best experience because I got to meet so many people and just everybody that I met and worked with, and everybody was just so kind. You have a tendency of drawing in people that are really laid back and easy to work with, very sociable. I love that, I don't remember one time I was on set that we had an issue that somebody was, just unreasonable and we had to shut down, filming because somebody was having a tantrum or none of that. And so that's what I loved about you. You always seem to draw in really what you are, which is real laid back and calm people. And that's really huge. And then their talent is so huge. So you want to compete because it's like, hold on, they're showing out. They're doing a good job here. So it's like, I'm not going to be left in the dust. I don't think so. So it makes us sharpen our knives to be even better to what we're doing. But the environment was it's just fantastic for me.
Well, I can't wait till we can do it again.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. Oh my God, I cannot wait. So I'm excited.
I just want to say thank you so much, Betty. And I'm from Hawaii too, so hearing that you performed in Hawaii is awesome. I love both your and Steve's stories of growing up to racially blind, because growing up in Hawaii was a very similar story for me. Like all of there was Auntie and Uncle Kimo, in my church growing up, and locals and every color possible. It wasn't a deal or something. So I love that you talked about that and touched on that, and
even the Hawaiians that they would say were more, 80 or 90% Hawaiian. They were very dark like me, right? Big
absolutely.
Afros. I mean, you wouldn't know until they started talking.
Yep, absolutely. And a lot of Pacific Islanders are very dark. I was one of the whitest people I knew growing up. Thanks for sharing about being persistent too, and the cold calling. Did you have to do that any other times in your life too?
It was always when there was something that I wanted to do. My husband would tell me that I didn't understand the word no, and I would go, no, I understand it. They're just not talking to me. I mean, I understand no, I get that, but I just thought, no, they're not talking to me. But I wanted to make sure that my tools were sharp, because I always feel like I'm going in so green that I have no idea what I'm doing or saying. I just know I have the vision of what I would like to do and have happen. And if not, I know I need to go back to the tool shed, sharpen up the tools, and then come back and compete again. I did that when we got here to music theater, because they said you had to be equity. So I thought, well, first of all, I'm not equity. And then they said, well, you have to have done a Broadway show. And I was like, well, I haven't done a Broadway show. And then, well, you have to know somebody. And then I thought, well, I don't know anybody. So I thought, yeah, I'm not going to listen to this. I'm going to find out when there's an audition and I'm going to go. So I called the number from the phone book. And just so happened, the main guy, Wayne, answers the phone. He says he normally doesn't answer the phones, but he did this particular day. He said, you missed the auditions, but if you're willing to drive in for an audition, I can do that. And I said, okay. He said, now let me get this straight. I'm 2.5 hours from you, one way. So you're telling me that you're willing to drive one way, 2.5 hours, to audition a song that will take less than 2 minutes? I said, yes, I am. He said, okay, well, come So he made an appointment with me. I went up there. I sang my song. He said, well, I'm not sure. Let's think about it. Would you like to go to dinner? He had some other people with us. And I said, no, I can't go to dinner. I haven't been in Kansas long. I didn't have a cell phone. And the way I got up there was through like some back roads coming to Wichita. I said, I don't know where I am, sir. I've been in Europe for 5 years. I don't know anything about Kansas. I have to go home while it's daylight because I don't know where I am. If I get lost, I can't call my husband. I don't have a cell phone. I have to go home. So one of the ladies that was with him, she goes, well, you don't know who he is. And he's this and he's that. And while she was going on and on, I said, ma'am, I don't care who he is. I got to get home. I'm scared. I don't know where I'm at in Kansas. So I left. And years later, when I did get to work with him, I shared that story. He goes, oh, people should never do that. I said, you know, I was grateful that you called me and you started hiring me for your shows. I said, but I just couldn't get into, oh my God, that's Steve Balderson. Oh my God, that's Wayne. Oh my God, is this person or that person? Because I don't need to know all that. I just need to know what I can bring to your project. And the rest of the stuff, I just don't need to know that because it has nothing to do with me sharpening my tools. So that's my mindset. I know there's people that can outsing me, can outact me. I understand all of that. But I have a little piece of the puzzle to bring that I think is beneficial for your project. So that's why I'm here.
The one and only Betti O. You can see Betti O in Pep Squad on Amazon Prime Video. Thank you to all our guests and listeners for making this first season of the Filmmaking Confidential podcast a rewarding and special experience. I can't wait to come back and share more in season 2. Please leave a review to let us know how we're doing. The Filmmaking Confidential podcast is a production of Dakanga Audio and produced by myself and Ella Spencer. Our theme music is composed by Kevin Robles. For more of the Filmmaking Confidential podcast, head over to filmmakingconfidential.com. To learn more of my filmmaking secrets, be sure to pick up a copy of the book Filmmaking Confidential, available on Audible, paperback, and ebook, wherever books are sold. I'm Steve Balderson. Thanks for listening and spreading the word. Until next time, keep making, keep doing, keep going.